So, welcome. Nice to see you. It's been a long time since I've ever presented, so I'm a bit rusty. I hope it goes well. Okay. This 25-minute talk, is about Pimp Your Parameters, the magic of transformation classes. So first of all, thanks for our sponsors. Without them, this would absolutely not be possible. So shout out to them. So if you get no idea who I am, I'm Emrys. I'm a team lead of a small team called Deployment Automation at a German company called Medallis. I've been in IT for the past 20 years and had my first experience with PowerShell with V1, but it's about 16 years ago I really fell in love with this stuff. And I still hate PowerPoint. Okay. Only demos this time. We just quickly look at converting types. Not that I'm a specialist or expert on that, but just as a recap. And then we'll just implement our own custom transformation attributes. And that's my slides. That's how much I love PowerPoint. Okay. This is something we do every day, thousands of times. We assign a string to a variable, in this case, 1, 2, 3 as a string. I can get the type. It's type system string, as expected. But we can cast it to another variable, which is an integer. And it just works. So this is implemented on the actual type, but it transforms a string into a different type integer, which is great. We use it all the time, and it helps us a lot. We can do the same with a double to an int. We will lose its accuracy, so that will only be 123 now. But if we try to assign a real string, which cannot be interpreted as a number or as an integer, we will fail because it cannot transform that type into a different type. But it works for other things. So where it can, it will. Where it can't, it will fail. So we're already transforming something. But this is implemented on a class. This is something I don't use often enough, the as keyword. That's another way to transform from one into the other type. Just with the difference, if it fails, if it doesn't work, you will not get an error. It just will return null. Just thought I'd mention that. I always think it's amazing. Okay. Now we come to the transformation classes. So transformation just transforms one thing into another. Normally one type into a different type, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And there are exactly two built-in transformation attributes in PowerShell. One is for DSC. I have no idea what it's for. Something to do with PSD files and transforming them. I don't know. You have to ask a DSC guy for that. And there's a PS credential transformation attribute built in. It's been there since version 2 of PowerShell. So in this example, I want to have a PS credential stored in my cred variable. And I just want to pass it in a username. If you do that, surprise, surprise, it doesn't work. Cannot convert value to type system string. But as I said, there is a built-in credential attribute, and it's called System Management Automation Credential Attribute. As I said, when you make classes, you normally put the keyword attribute at the end, but you can drop it. It's just convention. We'll look at that. So I've got my transformation attribute, and I put it in front of my type, in front of my value, and then I'm going to pass user. So if I execute that, didn't work either. Still can't transform it because it matters in which sequence we have it. So if we have PS credential, the type, and then we put the transformation attribute between the variable and the type, then it will work. Because this test user will be passed to the transformation attribute. That will then try and transform it into what we want. And the result will get then passed to the variable and to the type. And if that all works out, it should just work. And it did, half. So the transformation attribute kicked in and said, oh, I've got here a string. I think that's a username. Please give me your password. Type in a password. And then we've got, in this variable, we've got a PS credential. So that works. But we are talking about how to use them, how to create them, especially in the context of functions. So here I've got a test credential function, and it's just got one parameter of type PS credential. And this is the old way. First, I create the credential object and then pass it to my parameter. And because it's of type PS credential, it works, no errors. However, if I just call the same function and just pass in a string, actually the credential attribute will kick in, ask me for a password, and then I've got that PS credential in my function. But there's no attribute there. That is because the transformation attribute for PS credential is always there and has been since version 2.0. It just works. But when we implement our own transformation attributes, we write our own classes, then we just have to give it a key, the attribute name to signal that we want to use it. Okay, so that was a built-in transformation attribute. Now let's talk about creating our own ones. So I've got this function, test secure string, and it expects a secure string password. So if I just pass in a clear text password, of course, it won't work because it's a string, not a secure string. We would have to first convert it. But I work with developers, and they hate PowerShell, and they hate using secure strings. They absolutely hate it. What they want to is, like with other command line tools, they just want to pass in the password in clear text. And I sort of can understand it, because when you're just rocking the console, you don't want to always create a secure string. You just want to pass in a password and say, okay, that's okay. So what we want to do is we want to create a transformation attribute that will take the string, convert it into a secure string, so we can do whatever we want. And that's what we're going to do exactly now. For that, we have to create a transformation class. I called it here secure string transformation attribute. The attribute is not mandatory, it's just best practice. And it inherits from argument transformation attribute. And it has a transform method and has these two values, the engine extrinsics and input data. Only the input data is interesting for us, or in this case. And this is just the form you always use, copy, paste, never change it. And what we do here is in the input data, that's the value you put in your parameter. So your password in clear text, whatever. And then we can take this object and we can transform it the way we want to handle it. So basically, what I'm asking, if my input data is a string, then we're going to take the input data and just convert it to a secure string, save it in a secure string, and that's it. Otherwise, I'm just saving the input data and just pushing it through without changing it. And then I'm just going to return that value. So let's just load that up. Then we got here our function. I'll just, oops. Okay, so I've got my test secure string conversion function, and I've got my secure string parameter, which is called password, and now I'm adding the secure string transformation attribute. I could call it with attribute. That would work because that's the name of the class, but I can just drop it. So okay, and now, yeah, I can call it. So this time I'm calling it a function. I'm passing in a secure string. So I'm taking care of the conversion myself, and I'm giving the function what it accepts once, and that is a secure string. But this time, I'm passing in a clear text password. So the password gets passed to the transformation class. The transformation class tries to convert it if it can. If it can, it will just present the parameter, the result, which is a secure string, and it works. And if you got a transformation attribute like this, you can give it to your developers and they will love you. And you've still maintained the secure string as you should. Okay. And here's an example how we can use this transformation class outside of a function. So once again, I can define the type, the transformation attribute, the variable name, and then we can just pass it in. And that just works. Now what we've done, we've changed the type. We've added to that variable of type secure string, we've attached this transformation attribute. And this is part of the variable. So now if I take this variable and assign a completely different string, it will still work and the transformation still kicks in. It's a good feature, but can cause problems. Yes?
Does the order matter?
Yes. The order, exactly. The order matters. So you have your type, then you have your transformation attribute, then the variable. If you do it the other way around, it will not. It will try to assign it straight away, and it will fail because it's a string and not a secure string. So I like transformation attributes, and I like using them in pipelines. And this is just a silly example, but here I'm just getting a service by the name of bits and piping it to restart service. And that works. So first I evaluate a service object, service controller I think it's called. But I'm not passing the whole service controller to restart service. I'm only passing in the name because the parameter has property by parameter name, I think it is. So that works, but what doesn't work if I just say I'm assigning a service to a variable, and then I just want to take restart service and I just put in the actual service controller. However, this will fail because restart service does not accept a service controller object, but the string name of the service. So in this way, to get around that, if we had a good example, is that we could create a service transformation attribute. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So again, we've got the transform method with our engine heuristics and input data. And what I'm doing is, if the input data is of type string, so bits as our service name, then just get the service name, save it, and return that. Or it is of type service process, then we just want to change it because it's our desired state. And if it's nothing else, I can throw an error. But I don't really have to because the function or the assignment of that variable will throw an error anyway. Where did I jump to? Okay, and I've got my restart my service. It accepts a service of type service controller, and I've got my service transformation attribute. So I can just do restart my service and pass in a string that gets converted to gets transformed, and it works. But I can also do something like this, which didn't work in another example. I can get my service, I store my service object in my variable, and then I can just pass it into my function. So my function now accepts a string representation of the name of the service or a service object. I don't care. If I've got the services earlier, I can just use them. If I don't know that, I can just pass in the name of the service, and it just works. And pipeline works as well. The support is great. And there, once again, it doesn't matter if I just pass over the pipeline a name, a string, or the actual service object. Okay. Similar example, just with an array. So our parameters only accepted a single value. But how will we go about it if my parameter accepts an array? And this is this example. So we're doing a transformation after process transformation attribute this time. And the only difference is I want to transform a string into a process object or multiple process objects because I accept an array of process objects. And the only difference is this time in my input data, there's my array. So the only thing I have to do is I have a result list and I have to iterate through each element of my input data array. That's that. And then I just go out, if it's a string, I get process, I add that to my result. If it's of type process, I just add that without transformation to my result. And then I've got stop my process. So here I've got my function. Here's my process transformation attribute, and it's of type a process, and it's an array of processes. So I'm passing in two strings. It works. It finds it. So we'll just go through, and I can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 PWSH processes and one notepad process running. Or I can just get my processes called PWSH. That is an array of process objects, and I can just throw that in. And once again, I don't care if it's just the name of a process or actual process object. It just works. And that makes things really, really easy. Okay. Now I've got something else. So what we did now, most of the time, is we converted from one type to a different type. So from a string to a secure string or whatever. But you can use the transformation classes to transform your data, not just from one type to another. You can actually change, you could keep the type and just change the way the content looks like. And this is this example. I've got this JSON transformation. So let's say I've got a function that accepts a JSON file, which is just a string. But I don't want that because I don't want to convert my object into a JSON. I just want to pass it in. So for example, I want it to be able to accept a JSON string. I want it to able to accept a hash table. I want it to be able to accept a PS object. And I want it to also accept a file path. And it should get it out and get the JSON out of the file path. So this does quite a lot of things. And we can achieve this with transformation classes. So here we got our argument, our JSON transformation attribute. And what I'm doing here is basically, if my input data is a hash table or a PS object, I'll just take that object and convert it to a JSON file. And the result will be a string in a JSON format. If my input data is a string, for example, I just do a test path on it, just to evaluate, is my string any string or is it a path? If it's a path, I will read the content of that file, and that'll be my string. And to be sure that my string which was inputted or the string I got out of the file is really a JSON, I just try and convert it from JSON, because if it's not a proper JSON format, it will fail. So basically, this is transformation and validation. And that's it. And then I've just got got a few try catches and then throw the error. So I have to do this. Then I got this get my JSON function. Nothing new. I've got my parameter and I've got my transformation attribute, and here I've got my examples. So I've got a string, which is a JSON file. One format works, prints, lovely. Now I've got a faulty JSON. Throws an error because I couldn't convert it from JSON. Hash table. Works, great. PS custom object. Works, even better. Pass in a file path. Works because there's a JSON in there. Pass in a text file with rubbish in. Fail. I think that's so cool. I think that's great. I can just throw anything I want at it and it will work, which is great fun. Now I've got another real-world scenario. So let's say you're writing a function which is a wrapper around a CLI tool. I don't know, OpenSSH or something else like that. And some CLI tools only accept complete paths and not relative paths, which is pretty common. So I have got this transformation class which will expand a relative path to its complete path. And so I'm only doing string to string transformation, not object transformation as such. So I just check it's a string, check if it's a path, if it's valid, test path, not. If not, just throw an error. And if it doesn't throw an error, I do nothing else. I just resolve the path. Okay, and this is a function. It looks the same as it has done all the time. And now I can just call it, and it expands automatically in the background. I don't have to think about it, and I can pass it to my CLI to or whatever I need it for. Yeah, can give it a complete path, works. And if I throw something else, it just fails, as expected, because it's a wrong type. And I think that's about it. So one thing I would like to say is transformation classes are cool and argument completers are cool. But what's even cooler if you combine them. Now that's when the magic comes in. So for example, you can write a function that and you have an argument completer which completes the string representation, and in the background it just gets converted to whatever type it should be. And that's great fun. It makes it so much easier to type a function in console and just like argument complete it and transform it and don't think about it. So I think we've probably got time for one or two questions if there are any questions. Christian, once again. Yes, you could do something like that. Yeah, no. You could do that as well. Yeah. Of course. You can do anything. I mean, it's PowerShell. Feedback slide. Okay, thank you very much.